don't think we're gonna come back. This is like too outrageous. New York is too much for my nerves.
Okay, to summarize the departure of Phil, Louis, and Peter. Let me be very clear about this. Whatever happened, Mark was completely aware of it and in agreement with it. There was never any question on who was working for who. In other words, I worked for Mark, and Mark could have fired me anytime he wanted. So whatever decision was made was Mark's decision of where he envisioned the band was going. I can tell you there was no creative differences with Phil. There was a creative difference with Peter. And as far as Louis was concerned, they just didn't gel. I mean, I don't think it was anything more than that. Again, stress this. All of this was Mark's decision. It wasn't something that I was the Svengali and I came up with all the stuff. I had really nothing to do with that. I mean, I had opinions, certainly, but I didn't make the decision. I frankly like Peter's playing.
Check 1, 2. Hey! 1, 2, 1. Please welcome from New York City, Riot!
Riot Fire Down Under. When I put the needle down on the vinyl, immediately I sensed the influences that I grew up with, some Edgar Winters, some Montrose, also the British Invasion style rock metal. And I admire the album to this day. I actually have it in the cantina downstairs, and I put it on the turntable from time to time to go back and listen to those glory days.
There was no money made during Rock City and during Narita. Absolutely no money. All money, or any kind of money that was generated was thrown back into the band in order to make a deal in the United States.
There's just something about that album with the seal head and the dude and the fire behind it, you know. I mean, that to me was the album, and that was the one my brother loved and listened to so much. So that's why it stuck out in my mind.
They had legal representation because, whether they know it or not, a contract is not even enforceable unless both sides have legal representation.
Riot Fire Down Under with Guy Speranza is probably one of my all-time favorite albums. Run for Your Life, Outlaw, you know, Swords and Tequila, Altar of the King, Feel the Same. Just great melodies, great rock and roll, great heavy rock.
Right, a great band. You know, they played Donington, and then when we came in the 80s, they played a few shows with us. You know, the Lemurs and things like that, and the Agora Ballroom thing on the West Coast. So yeah, they did quite a bit of touring around with us, and yeah, great band.
Billy, my partner, my then partner, he wanted a bit, you know, it was like the fifth Beatle, but my partner, there was more of caretaking. He went on the road, but he enjoyed going on the road with them. He enjoyed hanging with them. And so if you call that management, I mean, nobody was a manager in the true sense of management.
Canada.
Yeah.
This is really it.
Going to Canada.
First time for Riot in Canada.
Wow.
We are going to Canada right now.
Frankie,
really Canada.
what do you think?
Yeah.
I think today's my birthday, so so cool because I'm playing 2 gigs with my band Riot V in 2 countries
I'm not sure
on my
where it's
birthday. Detroit, Rock City, and now home of the Maple Leafs, Toronto.
Oh, look at this.
Beautiful. That's gorgeous water. It's like clear.
What's up with that? Donnie, get the views. Don't look at your phone. Look at this. Why is the water clean here? Look to your left. Oh my God.
Yeah, but
The Canadian border.
I wouldn't worry about anything. We're gonna handle our shit and go.
Here we go, the moment of truth.
Washington State. I've been through. No, we go through like Washington State, and then we go through.
Saginaw, Michigan.
Going to Wisconsin.
Getting pulled over.
We're gonna be here for a while.
Okay, they've approved us. We're good to go. Forward into Canada on the way to Toronto for the show tonight.
Woo! You got it, man. Right. That's the last shot, too. Really? That's the last shot. Don't like the shot? No, we can see it. Sorry, go ahead, I did. Bye, Mom.
The band was pretty hot at that time. We had we were well rehearsed, coming off the road, so there's a lot of energy. It was a new band too, because we had Sandy and Kip in the band now, and the chemistry was just right. It's one of those moments where you get a group of guys together and it just clicks. There's a certain vibe. The material was really, really good. It was good material. There was good energy.
They reformed, and Sandy Slavin took Peter's place. Kip Lemming took Jimmy's place. Jimmy went off and got married. So that was really what happened there.
We would work on material on our own. At least I did. The songs I contributed, I worked on my own. Guy and Mark would get together and work on material. Guy wrote all the lyrics for the songs he and Mark wrote. We'd get together at Mark's house and work on the ideas there, basically, and piece them together and rehearse them.
Yeah. See what the light's like? Hey, what's happening?
Yeah. There was a black sitting downstairs.
Martin!
Hey, Jimmy, how you doing? Good. And I had met.
Salisbury Cathedral, right here. Robert Lord Hungerford, born, who knows, died, 1459.
Ed Leffler was managing Sammy Hagar. Ed Leffler saw use in Riot because Sammy had the wrong record when he went to England. He had done a softer record, and then he saw the new wave of British heavy metal scene was happening, and he knew that, having toured with Riot in Texas a couple of times, he knew Riot was of that ilk. He knew Riot fit into that same scene.
Well, I had a couple of friends talking about Riot, They go, man, have you heard Riot? Yeah, they're going to blow off Sammy Hagar off the stage. They go, yeah, Riot. I think so.
Basically, Capitol, as a favor to Ed Leffler and to Sammy Hagar, says, all right, we'll sign this band. They kind of go against their will. It's a little too heavy for them. They don't really want to do anything with this band. But they sign this band so two Capitol acts are touring together in the UK.
He had Capitol sign the band under the understanding that Riot would agree to go back to England with Sammy and open up for Sammy on all those dates.
It's a really accurate sundial. It's supposed to point to the equinox. Some people believe that people from another planet or the lost city of Atlantis built this.
Then we came back and we thought, we're home free now. We can just record.
So Narita comes out. They've got this deal with Capitol, and what happens is that people ask why did they have these problems with Capitol? What did Capitol do with this record? Capitol kind of buried this record. They didn't really work it. It was released in the UK a little bit under duress, and in the States they were kind of ignoring it. So what Steve went and did was he did something that's quote unquote, in his words, embarrassed the label.
Billy and myself were doing commercials, and we had enough money to buy independent radio promotion guys. So we had enough money to put the record on the Capitol record, on radio.
What happened is the record kind of had a minor blow up. It did well in radio, and Capitol was kind of embarrassed by this whole situation. And then they were kind of shamed into picking up the option for another record.
We delivered the next record, Fire Down Under, and they said we don't want it. Our question was why. They said it's commercially unacceptable.
Capitol came to Riot and was kind of making signals that they wanted them to be a little more commercial. Mark Reale says in my book, actually, he's told me personally that they said, what do you guys feel about wearing makeup and things like this? So the band had actually tried, as Mark says to me, he says, we did make an attempt to make some more commercial songs. But then basically Steve kind of got in fighting mode and said, you guys, this is not you. You guys just got to be who you are.
And then of course the question became, okay, well, let us go. And they said, nope. And we said, well, how do we get out of the deal? And they said, sue us. We flew in British journalists, so there was a cover story on Sounds, the English Sounds newspaper, and that caused the petitions in England. And they were petitioning in front of the Hammersmith Odeon and various venues. And it escalated from there. It escalated everywhere. It escalated in England, and in Europe with fans.
The UK caught wind of this whole story because of these UK journalists going over and people like Neil Kay and Jeff Barton. They had gotten wind that Capitol was not wanting to put out this new Riot album, and they had put together a petition that they were going to get, you know, all the punters, all the new wave of British heavy metal kids to sign to say, you know, either put this album out as is, the heavy album we want that we're hearing about, or release this band from their contract.
So by the spring of '81, it was pretty obvious that Capitol had no intention of releasing Fire Down Under. So Bill Abel, who's part of Riot's management team, got in touch with John Kibble in London, who was a pal of mine. Both he and I were huge Riot fans back then, and he knew a few other guys, and he said, look, can we maybe organise a petition? We're going to try and lobby Capitol, get the album released that way. So yeah, we got forms together, we printed forms off, went to record stores, went to gigs. I remember going to Motorhead show, and I got a bunch of signatures there, and I think ultimately we probably ended up with 4,000 signatures or so. But they went back to Bill in New York, who took them along with his legal team to Capitol Tower in Hollywood, and the rest to say is history.
So the fans saved the band. There's no question. Without the fans, the band, I mean, the labels became fearful. There were two reasons why Capitol let the band go in the end. One was that reason, where they were getting a lot of heat from EMI in Europe and England, especially in England. And the second one was because fans from Southern California were riding up to the Capitol building up in LA, and they were spray painting. They were spray painting the Capitol executive cars.
So all of these forces came down upon Capitol, and basically they were essentially shamed out of wanting to, you know, get rid of this band that they didn't even want anyways, and so Fire Down Under comes out on Electric.
Donnie, Loud Park today.
Here we are again. We brought a friend with us. So, I don't know who this guy is.
Just a hanger-on.
Where are we? Tell us where we are.
We are in the new Otani Hotel in Tokyo. Getting ready to play Loud Park. For
all set to go down to Loud Park. Taking a few photos with the fans.
I don't think you know that. We knew that it was good. We knew that. We knew that the songs were good. We knew that the playing was good. And we hoped it was to be well received.
The band would record all together in the studio, like the basic track. So it was recorded as a unit, and they all could feed off each other's energy.
So we really pumped it out. I mean, we just went in there, and a lot of stuff was first takes.
Then when we went to the various leads, Mark was a really underrated guitar player. He was an amazing guitar player. Ricky was a completely different player than Mark. Mark was a real fluid player. Ricky was not that kind of a player. He was more quirky, but very extremely creative. It was wonderful to record them. The rhythm section, Kip and Sandy were as tight as can be. They were really tight, and they were terrific.
Fire Down Under, I think the Deep Riot fans just consider it a better album, possibly better production, a little more aggressive. It's got some of their bigger hits on it.
Looking back, many years later, I started to realize how good it was and how it influenced some other bands, and it still holds up today. So that really, that blows me away. That sometimes it takes many years for it to really hit home.
And the first time that I really heard the Fire Down Under album, I was really impressed with the songwriting. I was impressed with the guitar playing, don't get me wrong. I thought the guitar playing was great, and I also thought Guy Speranza's vocals were very good.
I actually met Mark Reale in 1981. It was through a mutual friend of ours, Ricky Warhite, who was the head of the street team for Riot in San Antonio, Texas at the time. So Mark would come down to visit. He didn't like the cold New York weather. He liked the warm weather of Texas. And so he would come down. And he liked to jog and run and stuff like that. So he would come down and stay with Rick sometimes. And while he was down here, he would want to keep his chops up. So Ricky asked if he knew of any bands or players that would want to get together and jam and stuff. So the Texas Slayer I was in at the time was rehearsing in Rick's garage. So Mark came in, and that's when we met him, in the garage. And so we would just play Riot songs, some Slayer stuff, just jam.
Oh, I ate with him at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Mr. Rick Ventura.
There were grumblings on the road that Guy was unhappy, not with the band, he was unhappy doing it. I went to see a show in New Jersey at the Brendan Byrne Arena. That was I think it was a Rush show, so it was packed. And when I saw them perform, I realized we had a major problem, because what was occurring was called negative promotion. The band would play and the sales would die. Guy was just not comfortable up there. He was not comfortable.
A bit devastating. We were shocked. We tried our best to persuade him to stay. I think he might have wanted maybe just to settle down and be a bit more secure. Financially, and I think he wanted to be a family man, and I think he was just frustrated with the band not making it.
No, he kind of surprised us all. We were on tour with on the Rush Moving Pictures tour at the time when it happened, and everything was going great for us. We had entered the top 100 for the first time in our career in Billboard and on the albums chart, and Electric picked up our option, and everything was going great, and we were on one of the best tours at the time, and he just decided that he had it. We don't really know the reason, I just think maybe he had a lot of real bad insecurities that I think when success actually started to come, I think maybe he, was a little taken back by it, maybe, couldn't handle it. And then at the same time, he got married. You think you want something, and then, when the reality of the success and the responsibility really hits you in the face, it's like a whole nother deal, and I think that kind of shocked him.
He left the band, I think, after the third album for, personal reasons and family reasons. A lot of people say it's religious reasons or, whatever is out there, but in 2011, I went and I spoke with the guy's wife and his family and Jimmy, and they really mistreated the guy, and he was just sick of it, and the guy just had enough of it, didn't want to be part of it anymore, and Mark was crushed.
First and foremost, which is what I saw, and then later he told me, and then later Mark told me, was that he never wanted to do it in the first place. Never wanted to.
Boys, free my soul. I don't want to get lost in your rock and roll and drift away. Give me the beat, boys, free my soul. I don't want to get lost in your rock and roll and drift drift away. Give me the beat, boys, and free my soul. I don't wanna get lost in your rock and roll and drift away. Yeah.
Two alternatives. One alternative is to do what everyone normally does, which is find a sound alike. I mean, that's what you do. You have a certain sound. That sound was working, so you try to recreate that sound. The other way was sort of almost the kiss of death. This is the insane route, and you go out and you don't care about a sound alike. Now what you try to do is you try to cure all the ills that you knew existed. Guy's limited range, for instance, now it could cure. Now we could cure the problems he had live on the road. We could cure.
The Rhett Forester era is kind of funny in the Riot canon because they were on such a high with Fire Down Under, which was universally hailed as a genius bit of modern heavy metal. But with Rhett, what happened was they kind of toned it back a little bit, got a little Paul Rodgers and Bad Company-ish. They had some covers on there, and they were pushing those covers as the big songs from the records. So again, this was Riot being kind of out of step with the times, not particularly ahead of their time at this point, but this was when hair metal in California was really starting to rise, and we got Quiet Riot and Rat and Motley Crue and Dokken starting to take off, and Van Halen in their mature period. But basically, we have these records that seem out of step with everything else, and they were basically penalized for it.
Rhett Forester came into Riot, and all of a sudden Riot for me became much more intense. His vocal delivery, his bluesy, heavy edge really added a bunch of stuff to the Riot sound. Guy Speranza, God bless him, fantastic singer, but with Rhett came in, it just changed things for me for the better.
My first impression when Guy left and Rhett came in, I was friends with Mark then, and it was a little strange. And I think a lot of the Riot fans had the same feelings as me. You go from such an iconic record like Fire Down Under, because you're going like, man, how can they top Rock City, Narita? Holy cow! How can they top those two? Fire Down Under, you're like, oh my God! And then when Restless Breed came out, they get this Southern rocker from Atlanta, Georgia, and Mark was playing me demos. And he was like, hey, we got a new singer. I'm like, dude, what happened to Guy? And family stuff and this and that. And strong Italian family he was from. So he said the family really didn't want him to do it anymore. It's the band wasn't making a comfortable living. And so, they had to get someone else. And Mark just kind of did the extreme and went for this guy. And I remember the first time he played it for me, being a Riot fan, I was like going, what the hell are you doing? What are you thinking? It was totally opposite.
Rhett Forester's rock star character, it really is not an exaggeration to say that Rhett lived life on the edge. He was really like the ultimate rock star, or like in the movie Almost Famous, he was kind of like the golden god. I'll give you a quick example. Rhett would walk out of the house wearing leather pants and full rock star regalia at like 11 in the morning. Of course, he was never really up at 11 in the morning, so it was more like 1 in the afternoon when he was up.
On stage, you could see that Guy didn't really have a command, so to speak, of the crowd. And, immediately when Rhett came into the picture, in stage presence, that you can feel, on stage you can feel it. It's like when you walk down on stage, there was this focal point, there was like, when Guy was there, it was just like a bunch of guys running around on the stage, basically. With Rhett, there was like a definite focal point there, and that was one of the major things that we noticed immediately when he came into the picture.
Rhett was a character. He was this guy that, he used to drink his Bud Tall 16 ounces. He used to, he was just the real deal. Lived life exactly like a rock star. This guy was the epitome of that. From his moves on stage to his voice, he was a very soulful singer, very soulful hard rock singer with a lot of flair and a lot of style. And his personality was larger than life. But one thing about Rhett, the man could deliver. He was on point, and he knew how to hold a crowd, whether it was in a club or a big outdoor festival. And I've seen him in all of those settings.
And who chose Rhett Forester? Mark chose Rhett Forester. Rhett had already been out there and auditioned for a number of people, and they passed. All of that stuff with other people passing was going. That baggage that Rhett had was now going to become part of Riot's baggage. But Mark loved that style. Now we had this sort of bad company guy with baggage that was nightmarish to record because he had a drink when he was recording, and if you drank when you were recording, you only had a limited amount of takes in you, and then that was the end of it.
Rhett could probably drink anybody under the table. He was not a drunk though. He did not get sloppy. He did not get stupid. He did not get mean. One summer, he stayed at my house in Huntington, Long Island, and I'll always remember that Rhett could literally wake up at the crack of noon, which he usually did, and start polishing off a six-pack.
The Restless Breed album came out of the gate with songs like CIA, the intense Lone Shark, the intense Hard Loving Man. The title track Restless Breed was an epic, a fantastic, fantastic cover of When I Was Young, and as well as Showdown, which was the hit in Virginia on the radio for us. It got them a little bit of airplay. They went out, they played with a bunch of bands, they were on tour, they were still known as Riot, this great rock and roll band from America.
Restless Breed is a great Riot album, and Rhett brings so much to that album. And in particular, one of the songs that I remember is Hard Lovin' Man. And if I recall correctly, it's a long time ago, so don't hold me to it, but I believe he actually brought that song with him into Riot. I think he was doing that song before when Rhett was in the band Hitman, which was kind of a regional band that Rhett fronted.
The reaction on the road was like, okay, well, there's always two camps. It's like, oh, it's not Riot because it's not Guy. And then you have some fans that thought the Restless Breed period was the best period. So it's all over the place.
We got to know Johnny Z, who was Crazed Management, same guy that kind of discovered Metallica and Anthrax. We did a show in 1982 in October of that year. It was called the Headbangers Halloween Bash or whatever. And it was put on by Rock and Roll Heaven, which is Johnny Z, which is part of Megaforce Records. And we did that show with Riot and Raven, which was quite memorable and fantastic.
And I went to see Riot when they played the Halloween night in, I think it was 1982. And it was Raven, Anvil, and Riot was headlining the show. So the way that went down is Riot, everybody in New York knew Riot. And I was there up front, and I was in there, and actually Rhett held out the mic, and I sang into the mic one of the songs. I think it was probably Warrior. And later on, a few months later, I was actually hanging out and came in contact with Rhett, because I would hang out in the city, and New York City, and I would come in contact with Rhett. So we became friends.
I got to know Mark, fantastic guitar player. Oh, he's terrific, great guy. He was about a year older than me. We had a lot in common. I guess we liked a lot of the same music. And very, very influential band. Not much different in the sense of coming out in the late 70s and early 80s like Anvil did, and we laid the foundation for whatever was to come after it. Yes, it was called hard rock or heavy rock at the time, and within a couple of years, all of a sudden it was heavy metal.
How did Restless Breed do? Oh, that's a very interesting question, because Restless Breed had what they call a turntable hit, Showdown. It was a full-fledged turntable hit, meaning tons of play, no sales.
dearly. Great people. They never disappoint when we go over there. As you've probably seen, we played the great stadiums for Loud Park with the biggest bands. So the country's beautiful, the people are beautiful, the food's beautiful, you know, and when they come to see the band, they do it large, like this Loud Park. There's thousands of people here. I mean, I don't know what else to say, but we love Japan, you know, and the feeling's mutual, you know.
Keep going.
When they went on the road to see Rhett perform, it was close to spectacular. And the record company, they didn't support it. They had no belief in that record. They wanted the sound alike, and they thought that Rhett was so far off the beaten path that they quickly lost interest in it. And Motley Crue had now signed to Elektra, and that became sort of a pet project. And that was pretty much the end of Riot and Elektra.
First time I heard Riot was my buddy Mark's place when we were younger, early 80s. He slaps on Born in America. I mean, every song on that album is a jewel, starting with the opening track, the title track, going into stuff on Wings of Fire. Then you got the Cliff Richard cover of Devil Woman, which they really rocked it up. You got Gunfighter and Side B, Where Soldier, Vigilante Killer. It's just a great album, every track, and of course with Rhett Forester, who was a rock god, potential rock god.
For pre-production for Born in America, Mark would jam with me, Dave McClain, and Steve Cooper, which later became the Rita. He would go over the ideas, and I would sit with him and actually helped co-write Gunfighter, Wings of Fire, what else was there? Heavy Metal Machine and Running from the Law. We actually have demos of the Narita band doing those. He would take the cassette back in the day and to the guys, and basically they would listen to it and learn the songs.
Born in America was an awful experience. It was an awful experience. The record was done terribly. It wasn't the band's fault. The fault of that is that my former late partner was having a fights. I mean, we lost the label. I had lost a tremendous amount of money. I refused to work with him. He refused to work with me. So we were recording the album twice, separately, on separate occasions. I would never be in the studio with him. He'd never be in the studio with me. And we could have ended that. That could have been solved. That's another thing we can thank Mark for. Mark refused to do that. I asked him to do it, and he refused to do it. He refused to walk away. I said, you gotta choose, because this is insane. He wouldn't choose between me or Billy.
And Rhett grew on me. At first I was kind of okay, and then when I started hearing Hard Loving Man, I was like, wow, I started hearing these great songs, and I was like, it's a switch, but in the great Riot tradition of good music, it's great music, so everybody accepted it and stuff like that. And so I loved Rhett Forester, and that was my actual, when I joined Riot, he was still in the band. I got to play with the great Sandy Slavin, Rhett Forester, the original lineup when I first got in the band, and I was actually Rhett Forester's roommate. When we toured, they put us together, and I lived with him on Sunset and Lavery, off the Strip in California for a year, and great guy. A little weird at first, but turned into be a great thing. So
they followed this up with a quick live EP on the Elektra Asylum label, and that was also well received. It showed them on their live side, which took some of that production of the Restless Breed away and made it that much more vicious. A cool piece. They later surfaced again for Born in America, which had a different record label. The Quality Records is the one we got under with the crazy artwork on the cover, like all the Riot covers, crazy artwork. The record was a brilliant piece of material. The title track, Born in America, got an MTV play on it. So cool. How could you not like that track? You Burnin' Me is probably my favorite on there. Gunfighter's another really good one. Heavy Metal Machine's also really well done.
This song, Born in America, from the same album, Born in America, when I first heard it, I thought, this is like a great answer song to Bruce Springsteen's Born in the USA. Only, of course, with Rhett singing, it had a lot more balls than the Springsteen song. But more than that, I felt the whole album, Born in America, was also kind of an answer to all this great metal that was coming out of Europe. And it was Riot saying to the world, hey, there's a lot of good stuff coming out of America as well. And of course, I had my band Virgin Steele at that time, and we had bands like Manowar and the Rods and Raven. Well, actually Raven was British, but Manowar, the Rods, and so on. And Metallica was actually coming out around that time as well. So I felt Born in America was kind of like a defiant statement from Riot about, hey, America is no slouch either in the metal world.
We spent a lot of time on the record, but the record didn't do badly. It didn't do badly, and there was a video we did, but the video stuff nobody was paying for. There were no gigs. I mean, there were gigs, but they were sort of put together gigs, no label, and it was just it all fell apart there. That's where it all ended, and that was the end of it. And I mean, it was nightmarish because it was nothing but a drain. It was like I had to come up with money like every week, and there was no return. There was no future. It didn't look like there was any future. So now the band breaks up, and it's gone. The band's gone for years.